Ready for a deep dive into the world of proteins? Those tiny structures are seriously mind-blowing.
They really are. They're behind pretty much everything in biology and medicine, from our immune systems to how our muscles even work.
Right, and now AI is completely changing the game when it comes to figuring out how they work.
It's pretty incredible when you think about it. It used to take years for scientists to figure out just one protein structure.
I can imagine.
Now AI can predict these super complex shapes like that.
Wow, that's amazing. Talk about a revolution for medicine, biology, any field where proteins matter, really.
Absolutely.
And AlphaFold is like the rock star in this field, especially with all the Nobel Prize buzz lately.
Definitely.
But there's a new kid on the block, right?
Oh, yeah.
AlphaFold 3.
That's right.
Causing a stir for both what it can do and the controversy around it.
It's where things get really interesting. AlphaFold 3 goes beyond just predicting the shape of a single protein.
Ooh, okay.
It can actually model how proteins interact with other molecules.
Like what?
Think drugs, other proteins. It's a total game changer for drug discovery, especially.
I can see why.
Imagine designing a drug that fits perfectly into its target protein,
Okay.
like a key in a lock.
That's the kind of precision we're talking about with AlphaFold 3, right?
Exactly.
So we've got this incredible AI tool that could totally revolutionize medicine. But I feel like there's a but coming.
Yeah, you're right on the money. DeepMind, the company behind AlphaFold, initially decided to restrict access to AlphaFold 3.
Really?
Yeah, they offered it through a web server, but with limits on what scientists could actually do with it,
I see.
especially when it came to research for drug development.
I bet that didn't go over too well with everyone.
Yeah, you can imagine. Lots of scientists raised concerns about being able to independently verify research, if they couldn't fully access the tool used to create it.
That makes sense.
That whole idea of reproducibility is super important for the scientific process.
Absolutely. It's like, how can you build on something if you don't even know how it works?
Exactly.
So it's kind of a push and pull between the benefits of open access and science versus protecting commercial interests.
Exactly. But eventually, DeepMind listened to those concerns and they promised an open source version.
That's great news.
Yeah. And they recently delivered on that promise.
Awesome. So is AlphaFold 3 a free-for-all now? Can anyone use it?
It's a little more nuanced than that. Anyone can use the code, but only for non-commercial purposes. Academics, though, they get access to the training data. That's the massive amount of information the AI learned from.
Gotcha. So there are still some restrictions in place, especially for, like, drug development companies, right?
Right.
So while everyone was waiting for this open source version of AlphaFold 3, I bet others tried to fill that gap.
You bet. Lots of companies and research groups took the information that DeepMind published about AlphaFold 3,
Okay.
and they developed their own versions.
Interesting.
It's like having the ingredient list for some really complex recipe, but you still got to figure out how to cook it yourself.
That's a great analogy. So who are these master chefs in the protein prediction kitchen?
Well, some big names jumped in. We've got Baidu, the Chinese tech giant. Even ByteDance, the company behind TikTok, got involved.
Wow.
Each with their own spin on AlphaFold 3, of course. Then you've got some smaller players, too, like Chai Discovery and Lego Biosciences. They're also trying to make their mark in this whole protein prediction gold rush.
So it sounds like the scene got pretty wild for a bit. What with everyone trying to develop their own versions of AlphaFold 3?
It definitely raised some big questions about open science. Anthony Gitter, a computational biologist, put it well. He said he's not against companies being involved, but he believes they should follow the same rules as academic researchers. All that transparency and data sharing.
That seems fair. Everyone playing by the same rules. It means everyone can contribute to scientific progress and benefit from it.
Exactly. It's tough to evaluate or build on an AI model if you don't know the details of how it works or the data it was trained on.
True. So where does DeepMind stand now? Have they addressed the concerns about reproducibility that were raised?
It's interesting. Pushmeet Kohli, the head of AI for science at DeepMind, argues that AlphaFold 3 actually was reproducible even before it was open source.
Okay.
He points out that other groups were able to recreate it using the published information.
Interesting.
So it's kind of a debate about how publishing should change in this new world where you've got academics and corporate researchers both playing big roles.
It does seem like the rules of the game are still being written, but at least that conversation is happening. It's exciting to see it all unfold.
Definitely. And don't forget, DeepMind did make the previous version, AlphaFold 2, open source.
Right.
And that sparked a wave of innovation. Scientists have used it to do some amazing things.
Like what? Give me some examples.
Well, one research group used AlphaFold 2 to design brand new proteins, specifically for cancer treatment.
Wow.
They basically engineered a protein to target cancer cells with incredible accuracy.
That's incredible. What else?
In another case, AlphaFold 2 helps scientists figure out a key protein involved in how sperm and egg cells interact.
Wow, that's amazing. So now with AlphaFold 3 being more accessible, it makes you wonder what people will do with it.
Totally. John Jumper, one of the lead researchers behind AlphaFold, he's really excited to see how people use it. Even if things don't always go perfectly, he knows there will be some failures along the way. But that's part of science, right? Sometimes those unexpected outcomes lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
That's a great attitude. Embrace the stumbles, celebrate the wins, and always push the boundaries of what's possible.
Right, exactly.
We've talked about all the excitement and controversy around AlphaFold 3, but I feel like we haven't really gotten into what it actually is.
Good point. Let's break down how it works.
Okay.
First, let's focus on that key difference between AlphaFold 2 and AlphaFold 3. That ability to model how proteins interact. Imagine a bustling city,
Okay.
where each building is a protein.
I liked it.
Now, AlphaFold 2 could tell you the shape of each of those buildings.
Okay, I'm following.
But AlphaFold 3, it can actually show you how all those buildings are connected, how people are moving between them, like the whole network of the city.
So it's not just looking at a single protein in isolation. It's about how that protein interacts with its entire environment. Other molecules, drugs even. That's pretty cool.
Exactly, and that's so important. Because proteins, they rarely work alone.
Right.
They're constantly interacting, forming complexes, setting off chain reactions.
It's all connected.
It is. And to really figure out how things work in biology and to design better drugs, we need to understand these interactions.
Okay, you're blowing my mind here. So how does AlphaFold 3 actually do all this?
It's not magic.
It kind of feels like magic.
I know, right? But it relies on something called a deep learning neural network. Basically, think of it as this giant web of mathematical equations
Okay.
that can learn really complex patterns from huge amounts of data.
So it's learning from the structures of proteins that we already know.
Precisely. AlphaFold 3 was trained on this massive database of protein structures. It also had information on how proteins interact. It's like showing the AI millions of protein snapshots and letting it figure out the rules.
I love that. So once it knows the rules, it can predict the structure of a brand new protein, one we've never even seen before.
Exactly. You feed it the amino acid sequence.
Okay.
That's like the basic building blocks of the protein.
Ingredients.
Yes. And AlphaFold 3 uses everything it's learned to predict how that sequence folds up into this complex 3D structure.
So it's like a protein origami master living inside a computer, folding things into these intricate shapes.
Perfect analogy. And get this, AlphaFold 3 doesn't just give you one structure. It gives you a measure of how confident it is about different parts of the prediction.
Oh, that's really helpful.
Right. It's basically saying, hey, I'm 99% sure this part looks like this, but I'm not so sure about this other bit.
So it's not just giving you an answer, it's telling you how much you can trust that answer, which is super important for scientists.
Absolutely. It lets them focus their energy on the parts that might need more investigation.
This is all so powerful. The possibilities are endless. What does this mean for the future of scientific research?
It's really mind-blowing when you think about it. We could speed up drug discovery so much
Okay, yeah.
by being able to see exactly how a drug will interact with a protein.
Right.
Or we could understand how those tiny changes in our DNA, those mutations, how they actually affect protein structure and function.
And how that leads to disease.
Exactly. It could lead to totally new ways of treating diseases.
I feel like we're entering a whole new era of biological research, all thanks to AI.
Definitely. Tools like AlphaFold are transforming how we do science. It's not just about crunching numbers anymore. It's about understanding life at its most basic level.
This is so exciting. But I gotta ask, where do we go from here? What's next for AlphaFold and the field of protein prediction?
Well, one of the big challenges is predicting the structures of really large protein complexes, like those intricate machines made of multiple proteins working together.
So we've mapped the individual buildings, but now we need to figure out how they operate as a whole.
Exactly. And then there's protein dynamics to think about.
Right, because they're not just static structures, right?
Right. AlphaFold gives us this snapshot, but in reality, proteins are always moving and changing shape depending on what's happening around them.
So we need to go from the blueprint to actually seeing the building in action.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. To truly understand proteins, we need to see how they behave in different conditions, how they interact with everything else.
It sounds complicated.
It is. It's the next frontier. We're going to need even more advanced AI tools,
Okay.
and we need to figure out how to combine those with experimental techniques.
Yeah, it really does sound complicated, but that's what makes science so cool, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's always something new to discover, another layer to peel back.
Always another puzzle to solve. Never gets boring. But let's bring it back to our listeners for a minute.
Okay.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into AI and protein prediction.
We have.
What are the key things we want people to walk away with?
Well, first and foremost, AI is totally transforming how we understand proteins.
Right, those building blocks of life. And AlphaFold has been a huge part of that, right?
Absolutely. Being able to predict those complex protein structures so quickly and accurately, it's a game changer.
And we can't forget about open access.
Yeah.
Making these tools available to everyone. That's so important.
Couldn't agree more. Sharing all that knowledge and data lets researchers everywhere build on each other's work, verify findings. It really pushes science forward in a big way.
Exactly. And we saw how the whole scientific community came together to make sure AlphaFold 3 would be open.
Yeah, that was pretty inspiring.
It shows how important collaboration and transparency are, especially in this new age of AI-driven research.
Yeah.
Science is at its best when we all work together.
Definitely.
Well, this has been an incredible journey, exploring the world of AI and protein prediction.
It has.
We've seen the breakthroughs, the debates, all the potential and the challenges that are still out there.
Right.
I'm honestly just blown away by what the future holds.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's a really exciting time to be working in this field. And with tools like AlphaFold becoming more accessible, who knows what amazing discoveries are just around the corner. There's so much potential. It's truly thrilling.
It really is. And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us.